Hello and welcome to this edition of Chief Chat with Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, James Cody. I'm your host, Staff Sergeant Holly Roberts Davis. Thanks for joining us. Chief Chat is a chance for airmen working all across the world to have a direct connection to the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force by asking questions about the issues they care about. Thank you, Chief Cody, for stopping by with us today.
It's great to be back, Holly.
All right. Thank you. Let's go ahead and get started. Today we've got a variety of questions for the Chief coming from all across the globe, ranging from cyber threats to compensation to the Master Sergeant Evaluation Board. All the stuff that our airmen want to know. Our first question is actually from Senior Airman Joshua Sievers, and this has to do with education benefits. Education is a key driving force for many U.S. citizens when deciding to join the military. With the many cuts in other areas of the DoD, there is talk of potential reductions to MIL-TA and other educational programs provided by the Air Force. What cutbacks, if any, will there be to the education benefits of current and future Air Force members, and what possible improvements are being considered?
Sure. So this comes up a lot. Obviously, we've been kind of reeling over this this topic specifically since we went into sequestration when we had to suspend TA. And it's important that we really use the right word, right? We didn't cut it. We suspended it for the period of time that we had to by law. I mean, we went into sequestration. We couldn't spend money that we didn't have appropriated. But, you know, they then again passed a law after that that said that we would fund it. So we have. And I think it's important that everybody, and certainly all of our airmen, really have a full appreciation and recognize how much we value education as much as the men and women that have that as at least in their top 3 reasons for joining the military, and it has always been the case. We understand it's a force multiplier, so we've kind of ensured that our airmen are utilizing tuition assistance at the right times in their career, you know, not having it, you know, conflict with other priorities that our Air Force has them, i.e. their training, you know, upgrade training or professional military education, as well as making sure we're not pursuing, you know, multiple degrees in areas that just don't make sense. Additionally, you know, the Department of Defense put some requirements into tuition assistance and really kind of consistent with what most universities do, and that was minimum grades for undergraduate and graduate degree programs to have that tuition assistance reimbursed. So there's no lack of commitment by the Air Force to continue to press forward and make sure there is funding available for tuition assistance, make sure that our community college of the Air Force is still a really sought after opportunity for our airmen, an opportunity that is available to them. There's always discussions about everything in the budget, but there are no specific discussions going on right now about anything to do with tuition assistance or our educational benefits from within the department. I mean, a lot of people have seen some things reference the Commission's report on, you know, military retirement and compensation. There are some recommendations in there when you talk about the post 9/11 GI Bill. Those are recommendations that have been provided back to the service. We're analyzing that right now within the services. The Department of Defense will make a recommendation back to the President, and then Congress will act on all of that. But that's not a specific service initiative in any way, shape, or form.
Okay, we just had some TA changes, so I'm sure airmen will be happy to hear that there are hopefully none in the future. All right, our next question is actually an audience question. We have Airman First Class Ruby Doo, and he is going to come up to the mic and ask you his question.
All right.
I'm First Class Ruby with the United States Air Force Honor Guard.
Great to meet you.
This year we are seeing a 1% pay raise and BAH drop in some areas. Can you give us your take on why some airmen are seeing a drop in compensation?
Yeah, so really, to be honest, and you can take your seat, but thank you for the question, unless you want to stand there. The reality is we have not cut anything. And we've been trying to articulate that along the way. We have clearly had to go forward within the budgets within this significantly fiscally constrained environment and slow the growth in certain areas. And there have been cuts within the budget, certainly within programs in our services. But when it comes to pay and benefits, not a cut. A slowing of growth is what has been proposed in the budget. That's what a 1% pay raise is versus a different number. Taking away money would be a cut. Slowing the growth is what we've had to do. And it's been a challenging time within the Department of Defense in this environment to continue to kind of sustain this all-volunteer force, make sure that compensation, pay, and benefits are reasonable. And I think it's important that we understand, since between 2001 and 2012, our pay and benefits increased 40%. I think everybody can appreciate we can't sustain that kind of growth. You just can't. That is in no way, shape, or form to imply or insinuate in any way that every bit of the pay and benefits that our airmen and their families receive today, they are not entitled to and have not earned. They have. And we are in the right place with that. But in the coming years and in the current status that we're in with this fiscal environment, we have to slow the growth. So specifically when you talk about BAH, what we're talking about again is slowing growth. Nobody's BAH is reducing. We have a policy that actually ensures that we protect that. So you're not all of a sudden going to buy into something and we're going to reduce it next year and you don't have enough. So until you move and go to a new location and maybe there's a new BAH rate at that location that might have been less, it might have been more at a different time for other people, yours doesn't change. It just really doesn't. And to be honest, on average this year, everybody's BAH were ways, and this is an aggregate, about $17 a month, about 0.5%. That's the aggregate. Some people always see, and you always have, even when we weren't talking about any type of slowing of growth within BAH, we do a validation all the time of the housing costs in areas, and that's how the BAH fluctuates over time. Sometimes it increases, sometimes it decreases, just based on the average cost of living, quarters housing in the area that you live in.
All right, great.
Sure.
Hopefully that answered your question.
Hopefully, did it? Okay.
All right, let's switch gears here for just a moment and talk about some of our younger airmen. We have Senior Airman Joseph Mazzola from Aviano, and he has a video question for you, so we can go ahead and take a look.
My question to you, sir, was, with everything changing nowadays with the Air Force, the new standards, the higher level of standards and expectations, how do we as senior airmen and new NCOs reach the new generation of airmen coming into the Air Force? What is your advice, sir? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, great question. So I guess I would, couple things. We've always held ourselves to high standards. I don't believe we're elevating the standards any higher than we've always really had. We have high standards for our airmen. The country expects us to live to those high standards. But I do think we're evolving as we have consistently evolved over time, and our expectations of our airmen constantly increase. Why? Because our airmen are more capable. We invest more in our airmen, they bring more to the table. From the day they step into this uniform, they are a more capable person than they were when I came in, more than 30 years ago. And I think we have to acknowledge that, and that goes to the point of the question. I think it's important that we continue to evolve like everything else evolves and not kind of get stuck in this idea of this is the way we've done it for 30 years, this is the way it's going to work best. That doesn't work with the young men and women that are coming in our Air Force today. And I think what we're learning over time and what the young men and women coming in are teaching us is that you got to acknowledge them in a different way than maybe we acknowledge the people that stepped up to serve before. So we're not lessening standards for anybody. We're going to hold ourselves to the highest of standards because the country holds us to the highest of standards. But how we leverage and acknowledge and appreciate and value the young men and women that come in to serve and their families that support them has to change, has to evolve. We're that type of enlightened people that you can do that. And I think they bring a lot of skills to the table. They have a much greater capacity than generations before them, only because society is producing young men and women that have a greater capacity. So instead of tearing that all away, right, and trying to build them up from the ground floor or something that worked 50 years ago, it's really about giving them the respect that they're due, treating them in the right way, acknowledging what they bring to the table, and building them up from that point. And you really will be able to. Our Air Force will continue to achieve greater and greater things. But I think that's how our frontline supervisors and all our leaders in our Air Force have to kind of take a step back, understand that each person is an individual, that they're part of this greater team, but they are an individual with individual capabilities. And really, instead of trying to fight that and get into this idea that they have to conform to thinking the way that everybody else thinks, they have to adapt this military lifestyle. They have to adhere to our Air Force core values and live up to what it means to serve. But this idea that we don't appreciate them for who they are and what they bring to the table, we're just not leveraging their real capability when we do it any differently. So I think it's about relationships. I think you got to know your people, what's important to them, where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are, what their goals are in their service and in their life. And if you do that in a real way, and they know you care about them, we'll get through all these challenges, the things that we're kind of talking about, the things that we have to kind of move forward on.
Right, yeah, to be successful, you're going to have to evolve, and
Yeah.
we just got to make sure that we address that. So great, thank you, Chief. Our next question is from Senior Airman Aaron Lee, and he wants to know about cybersecurity. With the increasing cyber threats, do you think the Air Force is prepared to defend against future cyber threats that may come our way? And do you foresee any officer programs for enlisted personnel to become a cyber officer?
So certainly the cyber domain is constantly evolving, and trying to be on the front side of that curve is extremely challenging when you think about how many people are into that domain. literally every single one of us in this room has the ability to operate in that domain. So it's challenging for us, but I do think we are prepared and becoming more and more prepared to be on the front side of that, to respond to any threats that exist out there, to ensure that we have the ability to operate in that domain and in cases when necessary, dominate it with potential adversaries. We've done a lot in our Air Force. Specifically, we stood up the 1 Bravo 4 career field for our enlisted folks, the cyber operators, very specifically trained to operate within this domain for our Air Force. We're not talking about any specific programs to become cyber officers. We're going to train the enlisted cadre that we need to perform those cyber operations that we need them to do.
Right, so there will be hopefully some opportunities for people in the cyber world.
Well, there's definitely a lot of opportunity.
Yeah.
It's a growth business for sure.
Yeah, and speaking of cyber, let's go to a social media question.
All right.
We have
Our favorite thing, social
yes,
media.
Facebook. We have Anthony Loverdy asks on Facebook about the promotion boards. What are the factors and expectations of the Master Sergeant Evaluation Board?
So this continually comes up as a question, and we're happy to continually answer it, only because we're getting close. I mean, this board is coming up here this spring, and I know our tech sergeants that are going to meet that board are pretty anxious about it. So again, if I can reassure them in any way, I'll do it again the same way. We haven't added anything into what was required before. Nothing. We expect our airmen to be working hard, doing their very best, and we're going to acknowledge that by looking at their records on a board and making sure we get the order right and who we promote. And I say it in that way because I want to be very clear. We are not going to a Master Sergeant Promotion Board because we think we've been promoting the wrong people. We have not been promoting the wrong people. We do know by going through a board process that the order will be different. We know that. We've done the test. We validated it. It gives us an opportunity to ensure that we've looked at the entire record or had the ability to look at the entire record for superior sustained performance. And it's important for us when we go back to that kind of point that I made about evolution, right? So if you think about how long we've used this current system that dates back more than 45 years, and you think about what we would ask a Master Sergeant to do 45 years ago, compared to the expectation and the responsibilities of a Master Sergeant today in our United States, if there is no comparison, yet we're by and large using the same process. So it's really about moving forward and making sure we use a process that clearly gives the institution the ability to discern amongst its people in a purposeful way and making sure we get the order right. But initially in this transition, it's important that everybody knows that there has been nothing added. We just expect you to be doing the best you can, and we'll acknowledge that through our board process.
And everybody's going through it at the same time.
Exactly.
So.
Everybody's going through it at the same exact time. It is going to be fair and equitable. We'll brief the boards on the people that got a 108-day EPR, because we know if we'd have given them just 12 more days, there might have been something significant that could have happened. We'll make sure that nobody's disadvantaged. I mean, we'll take care of all that. So everybody walks in on a level playing field.
All right. Thank you so much,
Absolutely.
Chief. It looks like that's all the time that we have for this edition of Chief Chat. So thank you so much for spending
it's
time
always a
with
pleasure
us
to be
today.
here.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure for us as well, and hopefully you can come back
I'll
pretty
come
soon.
back. Yeah, we'll try to make it not so long between the next one.
All right.
All right.
If you would like to see more from Chief Cody, you can check out previous editions of Chief Chat on our YouTube page at youtube.com/AFTV Radio, or you can look for future editions of Chief Chat by subscribing to our Facebook page, Air Force TV. From Air Force Television at Fort Meade, Maryland, I'm Staff Sergeant Holly Roberts Davis. Thanks for watching.